There was a lot of silly season madness in 2022. Vettel's retirement announcement, Alonso moving to Aston Martin,
I am Fernando Alonso.
the will they won't they with Danny Rick at McLaren,
Final race with DR. I know, sad times everyone.
the whole hot mess that was the Oscar Piastri drama. But we saw a theme emerge when talking about the suddenly available seat at Alpine, and that theme is that Esteban Ocon is not the paddock's favourite teammate. This strikes many people as surprising when they first hear it. Ocon seems like such a charming chap. He's always smiling, polite and friendly in interviews. But actually, on closer investigation, he doesn't seem to be the friendly buddy teammate we might think. Welcome back Formula 1 fans to another video. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons and ring the notification bell to be updated when we post new content. So, is Ocon the teammate from hell? Paul di Resta claimed a while back that he believes Ocon can be quite difficult, and not many teammates get on with him, which on the surface seems shocking. This lovely, well-spoken young man? But if you remember back to his 2 years at Force India Racing Point with Sergio Perez, barely a race weekend went by without the two of them having a scrap, and the tension didn't stop until Ocon's somewhat abrupt, if temporary, departure from F1 in 2019. The two were quite evenly matched in the car, despite Perez having more experience, and maybe that was part of the problem. Ocon has been incredibly driven right from the start of his career and had no problems taking on his teammate on track if he thought he deserved the position, which he always did. While looking back at their fights on track, I don't think you can lay all the blame on Ocon alone. The fact that he didn't know how to back down from a challenge or how to opt for finishing a race on the line rather than in the wall probably should have rung more alarm bells at the time. In 2017, they had a couple of large clashes, and while in 2018 he also had crashes with other drivers, including Kimi and new teammate Gasly, he had another collision with Perez in Singapore.
You've got Grosjean on the left-hand side. Now they're going to wheel, the two Force Indians, and yes, they did touch.
Given how much the team had been through in those years, with the financial crash of their owner, the bankruptcy, and being bought out by Lawrence Stroll, I don't blame them for not wanting to deal with two hot-headed drivers determined to be so competitive they were destroying car after car and jeopardising the team's championship position. It was decided that the two couldn't be trusted to race each other without team orders, and the team even threatened to bench one of them. It was a prime example of drivers putting themselves ahead of their team, and they clearly couldn't be civil to each other when racing, given how much Ocon would blame Perez for all their collisions. It wasn't just Perez though. At Brazil in 2018, Ocon was trying to unlap himself when he came into contact with Max, who had been leading the race. It cost Max the win, and the two were caught on camera after the race shoving each other as they argued, an altercation that saw them summoned to the stewards and Max told off by the FIA. So Ocon wasn't a great teammate to Perez and wasn't exactly a gentleman to the other drivers either. You'd think a year out in 2019 might have given him time to get some perspective, cool his head a bit and mature. He clearly had a lot of backing from important people in the sport, and he was made Mercedes reserve driver for the year, with Toto often stating his faith in him as a driver who deserved a seat in future seasons. You don't get the backing of Mr. Wolff unless you really have something to show to the world. And it's worth stressing, Ocon is not a pay driver. He didn't buy his way into F1 the way some drivers are able to. A lot is made of the fact that his family do not come from money, and even had to sell their home and his father's business to fund his karting career back when he started out. So that may play into some of his attitude on track. He has to fight to prove himself time and time again. And also towards his fellow drivers, so many of whom have had an easy ride compared to himself. But that also may explain why, generally, he doesn't seem to hold grudges when off track. Ocon was one of Perez's biggest champions when it looked like the Mexican would be left without a drive at the end of 2020, speaking from his own experience of missing out on an F1 seat and claiming that F1 would be worse off without Perez in it. With the support of Toto and Mercedes, Ocon obviously made a return to F1, and fittingly it was with French team Renault. We didn't see any obvious sparks between him and Danny Rick for the year they were teammates. I mean, who doesn't love Danny Rick? And when the team rebranded as Alpine, they put him front and centre of their rebranding. A French driver for a French team driving in French colours. He truly found a place in F1 where he not only fit in, but was respected and held in very high regard. However, when Alpine announced that he'd be partnered with Fernando Alonso for 21, Mika Hakkinen at the time warned Alonso against trusting his new teammate. He did add the caveat that he didn't know Ocon that well, but said he was drawing conclusions from interviews and opinions coming from others around the track, which all brought him to the conclusion that Ocon wasn't a teammate he'd want. And that does seem to have played out as true. Alonso was not quiet or subtle about his displeasure of Ocon as a teammate, especially after announcing his plans to move to Aston Martin. He was quoted as being relieved he only had one more race with Ocon before Abu Dhabi, and he never hid the fact that he didn't think Ocon deserved to be the favoured position at the team. Was it sour grapes talking? The two-time world champion chafing at playing second fiddle to a younger driver? Or was Ocon just not nice to be around? The two did have a couple of collisions and some arguments about team orders, but it was certainly far more civil than Ocon's rivalry with Perez, making it hard to tell how much was Alonso's well-known hot-headedness and how much was genuinely Ocon being problematic. All we know is that both of them seemed relieved to see the back of each other after Abu Dhabi last year. And now, Ocon has a new partner, in the shape of former karting buddy turned enemy, Pierre Gasly. Obviously, this was not the original plan. Alpine wanted Oscar Piastri, who promptly went to McLaren. To avoid Ocon, or just because they offered him a contract while Alpine was still leaving him hanging? And then Ocon said he'd love for them to sign his buddy Mick Schumacher, but that didn't happen, and instead we have the Battle of the Frenchmen. Which is interesting from a popcorn perspective. Gasly has spoken before about how their competition during their karting days put an end to their friendship. He claims that when he started outperforming Ocon, the friendship turned sour. Paul di Resta and Karan Chandhok are both worried this former rivalry will spill over onto the racetrack, with Chandhok saying the relationship will need to be closely managed by Alpine. The fact that they already have a troubled past, plus Ocon's potential resentment for drivers he sees as not having to fight for their seat the way he has, could definitely lead to some fireworks. Both claim they will respect each other and the past is behind them, so we could be wrong. The drivers should have matured a bit by now, and both insist they respect each other and aren't worried about working as a team. But we also won't be holding our breath, especially going into Turn 1 at Bahrain in March. Over to you viewers, do you think we'll see a French Civil War this year? Let us know in the comments below and remember to like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching!